Hello fellow Clashers, welcome to another episode of Exploring the Meta with KairosTime. Today we're going to be doing a really fun air deck that actually uses the balloon and the poison together. I wanted to make an air deck that didn't use the giant and also didn't include any legendary cards, including the Lava Hound. The result is this free-to-play deck that is actually really hard to counter if you have your push set up correctly. Before I get started, I wanted to give a huge shout out to the members of Son of a Witch. I recently joined their clan and they have been an absolute blast to be playing with. They're full of very skilled people, top 50 in the North America, and they provided this tournament in which you can see we're playing against a very skilled Goku here. If you're wanting to join their clan, go ahead and join one of their feeder clans, either Bewitched or Bewitched 2. I'll have the spelling of that in the description below, so go ahead and check that out. Now this deck definitely has somewhat of a learning curve. I messed around with this deck in a few tournaments before playing it in this one, and it took a good amount of time before I learned how to use it in just the right way. I did a lot of deck tweaking to try and make sure that I was using the correct cards to counter many different types of common decks that are being used right now, and this is the combination that I came up with. We're going to go over each of the cards one by one so that you know how to use this deck without having to play around with it as much. To start off, we'll talk about the balloon. The balloon is your primary and only real win condition in this deck. Without the balloon, it's pretty hard to make a successful push, and so you'll want to make sure that you play around your opponent to try and find out what kind of counters they have to the balloon. Common counters to the balloon include the Musketeer, the Ice Wizard, the Princess, Minions, Minion Horde, Inferno Tower, even the Tesla. There's a lot of different things that you have to watch out for the balloon, so the other cards that are in this deck are put in there so that you have an answer to each of those counters. Now when it comes to playing the balloon, there are two different ways to play the balloon. You never really want to play the balloon by itself going down the lane unless you know that your opponent does not have a counter to it or they do not have enough elixir to counter the balloon. So be careful about doing that. That being said, the two real places you're going to want to place the balloon is at the bridge and at the very far back of your map. If you have an elixir advantage and you already have defended, you can make a counter push using other cards that are already on the map, including the baby dragon and the knight, maybe the guards or minions, and then drop the balloon at the bridge. Now you're going to want to try and drop the balloon in the right position so that it is able to be protected by those other cards. For example, if you have a knight at the bridge and the balloon's kind of a little bit to the left of him and you place the baby dragon to the left of the balloon, your balloon is protected on two different sides so that it is less likely that your enemy's troops will be able to actually target that balloon. You can do the same thing by having the knight in front and the baby dragon behind the balloon. That's actually a really good combination because the baby dragon will actually push the balloon faster so that it will make its way to the tower quicker. The other place that you're going to want to put your balloon is at the back of the map. You're going to want to do this preferably if you have an Elixir Collector giving you some elixir so that you can build up a nice push, but you'll want to do this when there's not very much happening on the map and when you have enough time to make a successful full push. I actually recommend going down the lane that your opponent is trying to push from, and the reason why is because the balloon really needs to be paired up with other cards to make a really strong push, like the baby dragon or the knight. That way, if your opponent does go down the lane to try and take down your tower, you can drop the knight and the baby or the baby dragon in order to really build up a force. The next card in this deck is the poison. I absolutely love the poison with the balloon because it does such a good job at slowing down enemy troops. Even a musketeer is only barely able to take down a level 4 balloon by itself when it's under poison. Now, if you don't have the poison, you can definitely try out the rage spell. After this next update, the rage spell is going to be so much more strong, and the reason why I like the poison is because it slows down enemy troops so that your balloon can get there safely. The rage spell will do the opposite in the fact that it will speed up your balloon so that it can get to the tower very quickly. If you have a rage paired up with the baby dragon and the knight and the balloon, you are bound to do some serious damage, and it's going to be very difficult for your opponent to stop that. You can also try using the freeze spell. I messed around a little bit with the freeze spell, and I didn't like it quite as much as poison, but I do understand that some of you will have a stronger level freeze than you will have a poison, so you can try that out, and that's also a lot of fun. The next card in this deck is the Baby Dragon. As far as replacements for the Baby Dragon go, really the only good one that will still synergize with the deck is the Wizard. Be aware that using the Wizard will change the way that this deck functions, so you'll have to play a little bit different, but it's still definitely an option. The Baby Dragon is such a strong card in this deck, and the reason why is because it's very common for the balloon to be countered by minions. The really cool thing about the Baby Dragon is that minions under the poison spell and the Baby Dragon will die instantly to a Baby Dragon fireball. Also, the Baby Dragon is faster than the balloon, so if you have a Baby Dragon right behind the balloon, then you can actually push that balloon closer to the tower faster, and that is something that is a really fun tactic to use. That being said, I would recommend having something in front of the balloon like the Knight to take the tower damage, because the balloon is not tanky enough to be able to tank all of that by itself. The next card in the deck is the Knight. Now the Knight is a very interesting card in the fact that not a lot of people use it, and that is a really great advantage to you because people aren't familiar with how fast he is, his attack speed, how much health it has, how much he can handle, and because of all of that, it can give you a great advantage if you're able to use him correctly. Now that being said, if you haven't used the Knight and you haven't learned about his attack speed and his health and how to use him, then using him may bring you to a disadvantage. So make sure that you practice with him, get familiar with him. And he is just a perfect card for this deck because of his health points. This deck does not have a whole lot of health points, and so having him really helps to balance things out. He's also really great for countering things like the Mini P.E.K.K.A. or the Lumberjack because of his health points, and he's also a lesser elixir cost than they are, so that's definitely a benefit as well. The minions are a very important card in this deck. Not only do they add another card that uses air, but they are able to counter so many different cards for only 3 elixir. Another reason why I like them is because the balloon is oftentimes countered with a Inferno Tower or even sometimes a Tesla Tower, although we don't see those very much in the current meta. If you know that your opponent has an Inferno Tower in their deck, what you can do is make sure that you place your balloon onto the various sides of the arena, and then when it's about to cross the bridge, that's most likely when your opponent's going to drop the Inferno Tower. So then you can drop your minions near the middle of the arena, right as close up to their side of the arena as you can, and the minions will actually be targeted by the Inferno. Now that's very important because this deck does not have a way to reset the target of an Inferno Tower, which is very commonly used against the balloon. The next card in here are the Guards, and the Guards are a very important card because they are so good at defending against commonly used ground troops like the Miner or even the Mini P.E.K.K.A., maybe even sometimes the Hog Rider if you're okay sacrificing some health to your tower. They're a very excellent card on defense, and they can also help in offense if your opponent has something like a Musketeer or an Ice Wizard or even the Princess sometimes, so that's really excellent. As far as replacing the Guards, you can definitely do that with either the Minion Horde or Goblins or even the Valkyrie if you need something a little bit more tanky. Just be aware that you're going to need to play this deck differently if you're going to be replacing the Guards with one of those 3 cards. The next card is the Inferno Tower. Now, I chose to add the Inferno Tower because of how frequently I am facing people with giant decks, and the Inferno Tower does such a good job at just stopping those giant decks, so that's a really good card to be using right now. If you're facing a lot of Royal Giants, a really good card to use would actually be the Bomb Tower because of how good it is at killing the troops that are stuck behind the Royal Giant when it is crossing the bridge. In addition, you can try to replace the Inferno Tower with the Cannon if you're facing a lot of people with Hog decks. The last card in here is the Elixir Collector. I love to use the Elixir Collector because of how good of a job it does at supporting your win condition. Now in this deck, the primary condition for you to win does not rely on the Elixir Collector, so it is all about supplementing your win condition. I wanted to give a huge thanks to the people that I faced in this video today. ShareForce1, Goku, Sair, they all were very powerful and actually did really well in the tournament. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. This is KairosTime ticking by, and we will see you in the arena.